is going to crack.
Yeah.
Kevin Archer, there's a text in there from Kevin Archer to Hunter saying, why do I have to take the rap for the whole family? He's very bitter. He's very angry. He feels he's the only one that went to jail, and he's going back to jail. You know, he got convicted, and then a judge with political connections to them, you know, it's hard to believe, reversed the conviction, and the Second Circuit reversed the judge.
You know, one of the other abuses we've seen is D.C. Mayor Bowser, who had the city paint near the White House on 16th Street. So picture the White House. Let's say it's facing north. So this is the let's say this is the White House right here, and this is 16th Street, and 16th Street comes right into it. And she painted on that using your tax dollars. And I say yours in the sense it's not just local money that helps DC, because it's the federal city. It gets taxpayer dollars from all over the country to paint the phrase Black Lives Matter, which, as you know, is controversial. But individual Americans have a right to go around and make arguments about that. But the government's putting that statement on the streets of DC. And then they allowed protesters to add equals defund the police, which is really outrageous. Just outside the White House. So what can we do about it? You know, we saw that they had done that, and we thought, my gosh, isn't that interesting? Now, the District of Columbia government seems to tell us that the streets of D.C. are now is a forum for free expression under the First Amendment. So what we did was we asked the D.C. mayor for permission to paint Judicial Watch's motto, because no one is above the law. I don't have my Judicial Watch shirt. I'd show it to you otherwise. Because no one is above the law has been our motto for years. It's our motto and our motivation. On a Capitol Hill Street, specifically Independence Avenue. So again, if you think of the Capitol and it's looking out, this is the Capitol looking out towards the Washington Monument, and Independence Avenue kind of comes right there. Two main streets on either side of the mall. We wanted to paint our motto because evidently it's free speech on the streets in terms of being allowed to paint on them. So this is the letter we sent. I signed it to Mayor Bowser and the Attorney General of D.C., Karl Racine. We note with interest Mayor Bowser's recent decision approving the painting of Black Lives Matter on 16th Street Northwest, and the approval and/or acquiescence in the painting of Defund the Police alongside the first message. Both messages are expressive activity. I don't like the phrase defund the police. I object to it. I think it's a terrible policy for all the reasons I've been talking about. People go around and say it. I mean, it's America, or at least as of today, it's America, if you know what I mean, in terms of having our freedoms protected. Judicial Watch is a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit organization, which means you can donate, by the way, headquartered in Southwest D.C. For more than 25 years, Judicial Watch has promoted transparency, accountability, transparency, accountability, and integrity in government, and fidelity to the rule of law. Our motto is, because no one is above the law. A message that is particularly relevant today because it applies equally to law enforcement and public officials, as well as to protesters, looters, and rioters. Because DC street surfaces are now being used as a public fora for expressive activity, we would like to have our motto painted on a street, preferably Independence Avenue Southwest between 2nd and 4th Street, Southwest, which is near our offices. The lettering would be identical in size and color to the lettering used to paint Black Lives Matter on 16th Street Northwest. Judicial Watch would pay the cost of the painting, but we would likely need the assistance of the D.C. government to aid in traffic diversion and parking restrictions while the painting is completed. Of course, the painting could be completed when traffic is typically light, as was done with the Black Lives Matter message. As the timeliness of our message is important, please respond within 3 working days. If the Independence Avenue location is not possible, we are open to considering alternative locations. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. So we want to paint because no one is above the law on a Capitol Hill street, and we think we have the right to do so based on the D.C. government deciding to allow or paint Black Lives Matter and allow to have painted Defund the Police near the White House. Now, I don't know how under law they could deny us reasonably the right to do that. Are they going to discriminate against us based on our viewpoint? Either by saying no or imposing such onerous restrictions that it would be impossible for us to do this? If so, Judicial Watch is prepared to go to court to vindicate our First Amendment rights. Mayor Bowser isn't above the law. The D.C. government isn't above the law. You know, and as I say, this rule of law message is timely. It's a reminder that the rule of law applies to and protects all Americans. All Americans. That's what makes this attack on the rule of law so pernicious, because they pretend they're protecting certain segments of our population. In fact, they're putting the whole nation at risk. Every citizen, every non-citizen even. So we'll see what the mayor responds with officially. As I indicate in our letter, we're prepared to be flexible. If not that location, give us another one. We'll pay for the paint. We'll pay for the paint. We'll get the contractors. We'll do whatever's necessary within reason to put this message out there.
For me, as a journalist, it was always Judicial Watch, especially after I started working years ago in California, covering the U.S.-Mexico border and immigration, something that Judicial Watch was at the forefront, I believe, in investigating the bureaucracy and all of the loopholes and actually the national security problems that we were having along the 2,000-mile border with Mexico. It was you. You guys were at the forefront. You were the ones fighting the system and fighting for documents that the government was refusing to give up on. Did you ever think, decades ago, when you were fighting for those documents, when you were looking at, immigration issues, border issues, law enforcement issues, that we'd ever end up at this point that we're in today, that there was this much malfeasance and corruption inside the U.S. government?
Well, we were first and foremost in going after Clinton corruption. Right. So nothing really shocks us or surprises us in that regard. Obama was terribly corrupt. Remember, we had the IRS scandal. We had the Benghazi scandal that Judicial Watch helped break open. So in many ways, it's not surprising, but it's still upsetting and shocking. You know it's bad, and then you get evidence how bad it is, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And what happened with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and all the rest, including appointees of President Trump, in terms of targeting of Trump, there's really been no scandal like it in American history. But you really have to go to foreign countries to get that type of corruption.
Well, I always say, it reminded me so much, even when I was first working in 2016, 2015, even with John Solomon, on uncovering what we eventually called the Russia hoax or the Russia scandal, Obamagate. I thought, am I in the United States of America, or am I in a banana republic?
Well, you go back and you recognize that it worked before for Barack Obama. in 2012, he used the IRS to target his political enemies, and it helped suppress the Tea Party movement. It kept him in office. He used also the FBI. They gathered records about these Tea Party groups. They were thinking of prosecuting them. Remember our friend Catherine Engelbrecht? She had the FBI knocking on her door.
I remember that very well.
So they used the powers of government back then to successfully change, in my view, the outcome of the election. That's how you steal election in plain sight. Suppress an entire political movement that had organized against you. So 2016 comes around. Oh, lo and behold, they do the same thing again. They use these agencies of government to target their political opposition, and now we know why they were doing it.
We'll say it.
Our theory of the case was to protect Hillary.
Right.
You know, and you may recall, and some people get tired of us talking about the Clinton emails, but my point has always been is that the Clinton emails were the reason we're in the state we're in.
It was the pinnacle of everything.
That's right, and they wanted to cover it up and protect her, and it was never just about Hillary. It was about the Obama's Justice Department, State Department, FBI, Defense Department. All of them were implicated in the email scandal, and it turns out the White House was implicated.
I want to go to something, though, and I think this is really important, probably something that all of you out there are thinking as well. I know I get emails all the time and letters from readers, from viewers that ask this question. Why does it seem that this isn't just an Obama problem? And I'm going to talk about this. Everybody calls President Trump the disruptor, right? I always say it was the American people that were the disruptors. But when you look at the 2016 inauguration, when President Trump was inaugurated, and you see how tight former President Bush, former President Bill Clinton were to Barack Obama and to what happened, and how angry they were towards President Trump's success, you have American people out there all the time, and Tom, I know you know this town better than anyone, saying to me, this isn't just a Democrat problem. This is a problem with the establishment, with the system. I mean, are they right?
Oh, they sure are. I mean, you had, I was talking to Sean Hannity today on the radio earlier today. And, you know, there were two issues that we were facing. We're facing socialism. You know, big government usually means big corruption. So we kind of always knew that here at Judicial Watch. But on top of that, you really just had corruption, just base corruption. We saw that with Hillary Clinton, the way she changed the turn of State Department, and we go through this exhaustively in the book, that the State Department was turned into a cash machine, cash cow for her and the foundation. Her husband was raking in tens of millions of dollars in speaking fees that were going to her in part. Remember?
Right.
You know, they're married, remember?
Right.
So, you know, presumably they share the cash.
$500,000 for one speech from Renaissance Bank. And I think people forget this. In Russia, and Renaissance Bank was actually run by the FSB, former FSB, which is Russian KGB, former Soviet KGB. This is incredible, but no one focuses in on, this is the problem. You've got a media, right? Mm-hmm. Very few people that are telling the truth the way Tom Fitton is in this book, folks. Very few people, because you have the Washington Post, the New York Times, the major players, CNN, MSNBC, ignoring it for the most part, not even asking the questions. So explain to me, when you find out, when you see documents that former President Bill Clinton is paid $500,000 for a speech by a Russian bank connected to Russian intelligence, what goes through your mind?
Well, obviously that money is inflated. And so what are they getting for their money? What were these major corporations here in town getting for their money? They were similarly giving him big money. And of course, none of the Republicans brought them in to say, well, why did you give Bill Clinton this obviously inflated speaking fee? What were you expecting in return? What was your return on investment?
Right.
And that question, now we know, needed to be asked of Hunter Biden, who was obviously getting business tied to his father's office. At the same time, Hillary was raking it in at the State Department. So it's one thing, now we know, look, they needed to protect Hillary, but there was more they needed to protect.
Themselves?
That's exactly right. So what did Obama know? When did he know it with Hillary? We've got 20 plus emails between the two of them. Then we got Joe Biden doing exactly what we were concerned about Hillary Clinton doing, except we didn't know it at the time. I mean, there were indications of it in the media, but the media wasn't interested in pursuing the obvious corruption there. And so President Trump, being the intuitive person he is, he knew there was this incipient corruption with Hillary Clinton. And then he gets into office and he figures out what was going on with Ukraine and Joe Biden.
But he wasn't playing the game. He wasn't playing the Washingtonian game. He wasn't dealing and wheeling.
And he cuts to the chase and he says, what was going on with Joe Biden and Burisma? And
Just like any American.
And why aren't you investigating it? And they went crazy.
And they being both
the coup cabal, the leftist establishment, the Adam Schiffs of the world, the whole media establishment. And when you look back on it,
do you think the Republicans are to blame for this too? I mean, look, we have people on both sides.
No one defended him for highlighting this corruption. And what's been frustrating to me is how alone the president has been. And I go through this in the book. I'm convinced Judicial Watch saved the Trump presidency.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news